This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Hello, church family. My prayer is that you are all doing well and staying safe as the biggest chunk of October is now behind us. My calendar shows that after today, there are only 71 days left in this year, 10 weeks and a day. And as a church, we have quite a bit of work to be done in the next couple of weeks with our charge conference fast approaching. Before our charge conference on November 8th at 4 p.m., some meetings have to take place. We had one of those this past Sunday after worship. The Lay Leadership Committee met and they submitted nominations for their own committee and for the other church committees. The Pastor Parish Relations Committee will meet this coming Sunday, October 25th, immediately following our worship service. And just after that meeting, the Finance Committee will meet on the same day, October 25th. And then on Sunday, November 1st, the Administrative Council will meet. And as of right now, all of those meetings will take place in our sanctuary. It's easier in here to meet our social distancing guidelines. I ask that the congregation please be in prayer for these meetings and for the committee members as they would seek God's wisdom and God's will as we all try and move Harris Chapel in the direction God desires. The devotional this week was written by Michael Milton. It's based on a passage from Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. Paul writes, "For you yourselves know, brethren, that our coming to you was not in vain, but after we had already suffered and been mistreated in Philippi, as you know, we had the boldness in our God to speak to you the gospel of God amid much opposition. For our exhortation does not come from error or impurity or by way of deceit, but just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak not as pleasing men, but God who examines our hearts. For we never came with flattering speech, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from men, either from you or from others, even though as apostles of Christ we may have asserted our authority. But we proved to be gentle among you, as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her own children. Having so fond an affection for you, we were pleased to impart to you not only the gospel of God, but also our own lives, because you had become very dear to us." As Paul writes this, he is under attack. But then again, that was nothing new. Everywhere he went, everything he tried resulted in the same outcome: criticism. Often the attacks were physical in nature, resulting in imprisonment and harsh treatment. In this passage, however, the attacks were verbal and highly confrontational. The old apostle was accused of being a fraud and a pretender of faith. Many believe that Paul's spectacular conversion experience, as we read in Acts, resulted in the stimulation of a massive ego. Certain critics alleged that Paul enjoyed the spotlight and was motivated for all the wrong reasons. Still others believed that Paul was a master manipulator who parlayed his considerable verbal abilities into a following of individuals who were duped into a belief system by the apostle's golden tongue. Paul can do nothing right. So in the face of this harsh criticism and intense scrutiny, he writes to the church, hoping to clear the air of the allegations made against him. Paul reminds his readers in verses 1 and 2 of the intense pain that he endured for the cause of Christ. Recalling the events that occurred in Philippi that resulted in harsh beatings and painful imprisonment, Paul defends the integrity of his ministry against those who hurled verbal stones. As if the painful beatings were not enough from which to recover, now Paul finds himself in a situation of attempting to ward off those who deliberately wanted to smear his name and slander the spirit of the apostle himself. In verses 3 through 7, Paul understands the stakes are high in this battle. The ministry to which he was called is not based on his own credential or authority, but rather is from God. It tends to remind the Thessalonian audience that his work is about God and not about Paul. He passionately proclaims the truth of Christ, but he is ever cautious not to allow his words to interfere with the word of Christ. For Paul, the essential ingredient in this preaching ministry is that of integrity. He doesn't need to call on gimmicks or outrageous shenanigans to deliver the gospel message. There are many today who resort to outlandish and bizarre events in order to prop up the good news message. But the message of the gospel needs no such influence. Paul understands that the message is to be proclaimed with integrity, and the integrity of the gospel itself then makes its presence known. It's not about words of flattery, as Paul writes in verse 5, but about authentic ministry in the name and under the authority of Almighty God. In verse 8, we read that Paul's ultimate appeal in the face of the unrelenting criticism is an appeal to the highest of all authorities, God himself. In other words, Paul is, in essence, saying, if you have a problem with me, place the blame on God, not on me. It was God who called me, and it was God who authorized my ministry. The final testing ground for all our lives is our willingness to be under the leading and shadow of God. With all of the complexities of kingdom service, it's vital that our lives and our ministry be connected to the power of God. Ridicule will come. Hard days will follow. But in today's message, Paul reminds us that even in the midst of scars and criticism, his ultimate loyalty, as ours should be, is to God. So no matter how much the world does to try and make us shift our allegiance, let us always stand firm in our loyalty to the living God. And may our living God, whose loyalty never fails, continue to bless and keep you.